There you are.
Hey, there he is.
Well, the main reason we had you on here is so Josh could learn to defeat the other Joshes and be the only one.
Oh, okay.
That happened the other year. It was a little boy, right? All the Joshes met in that field and battled to
Oh
see
yeah.
who would get to be the one true Josh.
That's funny.
It ended up being like a little 10-year-old boy.
Was that boy you?
I was that child.
Well, what's up, everybody? It's the Godfo Universe podcast. We got a cool guest today, a friend of mine going way back to college, probably one of the only people that I've met in college that I liked.
That sounds fair.
Yeah. And quick promo, our first comic, Apollyon 20XX, comes out in May, and our second one, Biofile Kolga, is coming out this fall. We've got short films coming out. We're going to be at 2 conventions this year. I'll have those details later. What else, Josh? Am I missing anything
Like and
else?
subscribe to the YouTube
there you
page.
go.
We got a lot of stuff coming. We got some
lot
other
of stuff.
content coming. That's not just like not more of the. We got more of these episodes, but we got some other kinds of content that are more in world to the Godfrey Universe comics and things. So definitely like and subscribe. We're gonna hopefully try to get these up on some other platforms soon as well, so you can listen on Spotify and other things in the near future, hopefully.
Well, thanks for joining us, Spencer. See
us.
Everybody, this is Spencer Selmon. He is a now black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He owns and operates Swamp Fox Jiu-Jitsu in Florence, South Carolina, which is a bunch of guys like nationally ranked at this point. And he's an avid Godzilla fan and all around nice
As
guy.
all good people should be.
That's right. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you can say hello to all 2 of the people that are watching this, including Josh and I.
Hello, Dan and Josh's mothers.
You already know them. But anyway,
Oh man.
yeah, Spencer's an accomplished individual, a huge Godzilla fan, as I mentioned, and that's one of the main reasons I want him on here is because he's one of the only people I've met on the planet who actually knows what he's talking about when it comes to Godzilla. So I want to hear Spencer and Josh go at it. Like, was Shin Godzilla good or not?
I thought it was. Did you not like it, Josh?
I thought the aesthetics were really good. Like, I love the visuals of it. It doesn't have the best pacing, but I thought it was a really interesting take on especially to know that like that was Toho's response to the new American Godzilla movies. I love that they like doubled down and got way more weird in Japanese with it. But like there was some really cool stuff that it was hinting at, and I'd love to see them like do another one because it was starting to look like at the very end that Godzilla was starting to spawn like little like humanoid Godzillas or something out of his tail. Like there was some weird stuff in the practical effects that they've like released like back like behind the scenes photos of some of the models and stuff. They were going in some weird directions with it, and I was here for that part of it. But like with all Godzilla movies, they're best when the monsters are on screen, and they're at their worst when it's just people in the office talking. But in that regard, it was very much a traditional Godzilla movie.
I think that is a fair criticism, but I also think it's a little misinformed if you don't know like the background of the entire movie or anything like that. Just because the whole point was the movie was a whole commentary on how bad Japanese bureaucracy is. That's the whole because it was a response to the original Godzilla movie was a response to the the nuclear bombs.
Hiroshima and all that.
The new ones was a response of how poorly mismanaged the Japanese government responded to the earthquakes a couple years ago. Because that's why that was whole, like, it was making fun of, like, when they were in the scene with the helicopters about to shoot the, I can't remember the third form of Godzilla, and it like had to go through like 8 different people down across of a table to get confirmation of that. Like,
right.
I totally understand why people don't like it. There's a lot of Godzilla fans that don't like it. I think they're stupid, but, because I don't know. Like, for me, there's been 30 Godzilla movies. If I want to watch just a bunch of monsters on a movie, you have 30 more movies to pick from. Let this be something different. Let this actually say something. Do
you think it would have been more effective to just have Kanye West come on and say George Bush doesn't care about Japanese people?
My main complaint, though, is with the talking sings, though, is the one Japanese actress that they tried to claim was American, and her accent and acting was so bad. It would take you out of the movies every time.
Hold on. They had a Japanese actress try to be American, like play an American character.
That was
bad.
Now I've got to see that part. I've got to see that.
If you're a big fan of Eva, Dan, you would really, it's basically Godzilla is basically what are they called?
An angels,
right?
An angel.
Yeah, Godzilla's basically an angel. They even have some of the Eva music playing in some of the scenes.
Everything that I've seen from it has been awesome looking. Like I've seen him fire his fire breath, and I've seen like his metamorphosis, like stuff on YouTube, and everything looks great. So
yeah, Anno's his fingerprints are definitely like all over. I'm really excited, even more than I was to see Shin Godzilla. I want to see Shin Ultraman.
Yeah, and that is there's allusions to that is actually it's a whole universe now of the Shin universe, because they're gonna bring Kamen Rider in it too. Kamen Rider's referenced in the movie.
Yeah.
Godzilla's vaguely referenced in Shin Ultraman, but never his name's never directly said.
I gotcha. It looks. I mean, everything that Anno does has a visual flair to it, but he tells really interesting stories that always are really strange at first glance, and then once you think about them and unpack them and find out what his underlying symbols mean to what they mean to him, and then what they're supposed to mean to us, he's such an incredible creator. He's like, Dan and I are obsessed with him.
Oh yeah, he's great. I personally love. I think if you watch the most recent Godzilla like media in like the last couple of years, not including the American stuff, but the Japanese made stuff, you can definitely see how much he's influenced. Like, you remember that clip I sent you, Dan, not too long ago of like Godzilla X Gigan or something like that? Like, it was
that was
weird.
So cool.
Super weird. I don't think Toho would have made something like that.
No, that was
ago.
Great.
No.
That was a wonderful short. And I was like, man, this look like I could get into like kaiju movies if they look like this.
Yeah,
it was good.
For me, the reason why I like Shin Godzilla is like there's two things I really like. Either my Godzilla movies like super serious, like the original Shin Godzilla, some of the stuff in the 80s, or like really, really goofy. Like, out of all of the more recent like American movies, I thought Godzilla vs. Kong was like the best one that they've made.
Yeah.
I personally thought King of the Monsters kind of sucked, to be honest. It had great scenes, like some really good visuals, but that's a movie where my pacing issues come in, my human scenes come in, because even though the characters in Shin Godzilla were very one note and very like transparent, like they were kind of representative of like this particular, it's like a lot of anime characters where a lot of them, if they're not the main character, they're one note.
Yeah.
And and I thought that served their in that regard, it served their purpose better than anything that the one note American movies, because a lot of times like the movies, and I don't want to get on this rant, but Godzilla King of the Monsters, it felt like Marvel was trying to make a Godzilla movie.
Yeah,
and it just
definitely a step back. I like the first Godzilla that they did a lot more than I like King of the Monsters. The first one was more patient. They built up the whole, reactor meltdown, which was, that was relevant at the time, and that I thought that one felt more like the traditional Godzilla movies in the sense of like when he does show up, he's a force of nature that is balancing the scales, so to speak. I like the first one a lot more than I like King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I like Kong versus Godzilla probably felt the most like one of the just the silly monster mashup movies from the from the 60s and 70s.
King of the Monsters is great when Ghidorah's on the screen. And then
they did a great job with him.
And when he's not, it's just terrible and
sorry.
boring. No, it's just fine. Like when he's not there, it's watching 11 from Stranger Things run around looking for her mom or some crap.
Honestly, in my opinion, the best scene in that entire movie is the Rodan intro.
That's a good
where
one.
he comes out of the mountain and he goes against the fire because that was the pacing was great like that, and there actually felt like there were stakes at the time.
Yeah, they were killing. It's like these kaijus are killing
people. Dying very quickly. Yes, and the rest of the movie's like they have all these monsters, which the visuals are great. And another reason why I had problems with King of the Monsters, like there felt like there was nothing at stake towards the end of the movie.
It's like the whole city's cleared out. It's all dark. You can't see anything. Yeah.
Like they're like, oh well, I guess we're done here. Let's go. Like that's what it felt like at the end. And they're like,
I think they were trying to go for like a biblical apocalyptic revelation type feel.
And those illusions are cool. Like that's a really cool way to do Ghidorah, but I think they failed on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they dropped the ball on that.
Yep.
Well, so while we're still on like Godzilla specifically, which era of Godzilla movies would you say is like your favorite era? These are the ones you go back to the most.
Probably the Showa era, the ones from the 50s to about 1974, I think is when it ended. Yeah.
Well, the other ones didn't the other ones kind of start with the Godzilla 1985? Didn't that kind of reboot?
Yeah. Well, it's called like the Godzilla 1985. Originally, it was Return of the Godzilla from 1984. Right. It was re-edited into a really shitty movie, in my opinion. But I don't know. There's a lot of people like I don't know. A lot of Godzilla fans like worship the series, and I'm like, that's not how the series gets better if we just like blindly worship it. Like you need to hold you can love something and hold it to a standard at the same time. Actually, that's what you're supposed to do. Like I can love my child, but I have standards for my child.
We just went from Godzilla to your child.
Yeah.
I remember because as a kid, I had at least 25 VHS tapes of different Godzilla movies. I had so many Godzilla movies, and I loved all of them. I preferred, I loved Terror of Mechagodzilla. I loved, I actually even liked the Godzilla versus, was it Megalon, the one that had Gigan and had Jet Jaguar in it. I was young enough to think that was a good movie.
that one, if you watch that one, that like the whole thing with Godzilla is it's like anti-nuclear war, but that one like turns out to be pro-nuke because they were doing like nuclear testing on like the civilization was called the Cetopians, and they're doing like nuclear bombs to it, and they're like, we've got to send Megalon to fight this off, and it's like, why are we trying to like allow nuclear testing now in a Godzilla movie?
I had friends growing up. These guys that were twins, and they were, and I don't mean this as a joke. Like they were a little off. Like they were just kind of on the spectrum. Like they were high functioning. Yeah, but
I'm joking.
And they were super tall. Like they were just interesting people to meet and know, and they were great guys. But they're one of their obsessions, like literally, like one of their fixations was Godzilla. And I had no idea. I mean, I grew up. You'd watch like Godzilla reruns on TV or something, you know. But like Josh said, they had a wall of VHSs, and their parents didn't indulge a lot of their fantasy stuff, but they did for Godzilla. And like they had like the Japanese VHS, and they had ways of playing. And I had no idea there was this huge deep lore, and of course they knew it. And I would sit there for like hours with them because I was hanging out with them. And they would talk, and I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, I had no idea Godzilla was this big of a universe, particularly in Japan, you know?
It's
loved,
interesting. I'm sorry, Josh. I didn't mean to interrupt
I
you.
love the one with Hedora, the smog monster. It was such a weird, like
That's one of my
psychedelic
favorites.
movie.
The really weird movies like that, Shin Godzilla is particularly weird. Godzilla
Mm-hmm.
versus Hedorah, Biollante is really
Yep.
interesting. Those are like some of my favorites, just because they're a little weirder and they kind of offer you something different. And that's why I really dislike most of the '90s movies, the Heisei era, just because they were all such cookie cutter movies. Where the directing was so bad where if you could have, it must have physically hurt the director to even pan the camera left or right, because it was always a
Mm-hmm.
straight on shot like this,
Yep.
and there's that doesn't give any of the monsters any weight or anything. It literally looked like a fighting video game the
You're
entire
like,
time.
did Wes Anderson make this?
No, because I like these.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is like people look back on those older Godzilla movies and they judge it through like the eye of like modern Western cinematography and stuff.
Mhm.
But like at the time that those movies came out, those people weren't saying, "Hey, we're trying to make the crappiest, cheapest movie." Like Godzilla was important to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
they honor that character. They honor those people who wore the suits. Like it's a big deal to
I
them.
think I think the biggest issue that comes up is people don't understand how much smaller the Japanese box office is compared to the American box office.
It's so
You can't.
small.
I mean, you can't put, for the most part, you can't put $100 million in a movie and expect to make that back in Japan.
Yep.
Like Shin Godzilla, I thought the visuals were very good, and that movie was only $18 million,
Oh wow.
versus, yeah. And you think about, uh, Godzilla King of the Monsters was 10 times that budget.
Mm-hmm.
And way less interesting.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I I do I definitely fall into that category at times where I kind of judge the movies through the modern cinematography lens without appreciating it. But I do appreciate the craft of the original suitimation and all that.
You're like,
Even if it doesn't.
where's all the lesbians?
Why is Godzilla's race the same?
Blackzilla, dude, that'd be awesome. A Black
Godzilla
Godzilla,
would be hilarious.
dude. I would pay to watch Black Godzilla.
He's a bad mother.
So, explain Gamera to me, because I saw one Gamera movie as a kid, and I thought he was part of the Godzilla lore, but apparently I was wrong.
So originally, Gamera was made as a different, and I can't remember the name of the company right now, as a different. It's kind of like a competitor to Godzilla. It was kind of like Gamera was like if Godzilla was Marvel, Gamera was DC, basically, or vice versa. I don't know which one of
Yeah.
those came first, but kind of going for the same kind of vibe, but slightly different at the same time. Uh, Early on, the Gamera movies were very, very much aimed at children, and they're very cheap. Like even compared to Godzilla movies, they're very, very cheaply made, and they were terrible. Uh,
And I still had a bunch of them on VHS though.
so I mean, I own all the Gamera movies as well. I mean, I'm not gonna. They're still bad, but I still like to collect them. But the '90s Gamera movies are easily some of the best Japanese monster movies ever made. I would put
Yeah,
the
those,
90s Gamera movies that head to head with those three movies head to head with any of the three Godzilla movies. Any of the
well,
three
they had a
Kaidos.
very cohesive. They formed an actual trilogy too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, and the lore
and
is really good in that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the practical effects that they did a good. They struck a good balance between practical effects and CGI to where it looked about as realistic as a Sudomation kaiju movie could ever possibly look.
The fight choreography for being a '90s monster movie is so good. Every time I watch it, I'm completely surprised about how good it is. Because if you watch the '90s Godzilla movies, the fight choreography is really bad, really, really bad. It's like just walk towards each other, guys,
Yeah.
and then we'll do something.
There's not a single
Yeah.
jump kick.
I'll say this. I remember there was one of the Gamera movies that I had and it's been so long ago that I don't remember the name of the villain, but I remember that Gamera goes to another planet. There's like a UFO, and he fights this monster that its head was like a big sword blade,
The
like
axe,
a big butcher knife.
I think it's Gurion is the name of that one.
That sounds right.
What a
That
great
sounds
name.
right. Guron or Guron.
Yeah.
Right,
Was that the
so-
one? Oh, I'm gonna let you tell us. I think I know what you're talking about.
The thing about that one, like you were saying, like they were more kid friendly. It was always Gamera was the friend of children. He usually had a child, like, or a few children that were his, accomplices. He's like Doctor Who. He has to have a companion. But like,
Michael Jackson,
I remember
whatever.
that one. That one was like gory. Like the knife-headed alien thing was like chopping arms off and chopping like. That was a bloody movie for a kids movie.
I'm gonna show it.
I was like, oh my god!
I'm gonna show it on art from my side so everybody can see. Whoever's watching it, you guys probably won't be able to see it. I hope they can see it. Yeah, he's just got like a knife head.
That's
it's
I believe,
Chainsaw Man.
if I remember correctly, that's the one where Gamera does like the gymnastics routine to defeat him, where he's like swinging on a pull-up bar and stuff.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
You're like, this dude fit.
I just remember being surprised at how bloody that one was.
All I imagine is like the fight. They're like asking like the choreographer for that fight scene like what he wants, and he just like lifts his head up from like a mound of cocaine and just starts explaining the scene. Get him on a gymnast. Make him a gymnast.
He's leaned up against the camera with the reflective glasses.
There's a whole joke there I'm not going to go into. But Gamera versus Zigra. It's like a shark with a triangle head.
Zigra, yeah, that one, yeah, it's like a spearfish looking thing. It looks like half parrot, half spearfish almost.
Yeah. Man, this is cool. And so the new Gamera, I saw that trailer. That looks fantastic. That looks like
it's good,
horrific.
Dude. There's a really good
Netflix, the Netflix anime.
Yeah, the trailer or whatever we saw of that, like the still or the poster. Oh my goodness, it looked awesome.
I mean, if only it was an anime, I would be happy.
Or Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Godzilla trilogy on Netflix might be
so bad.
The worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's like he's
so bad.
He's like as big as a mountain, and it's all about the people trying to fight him, and it looks really weird.
That's what NyQuil takes that to go to sleep. How boring it is.
Yeah, it's terrible. I also think that I didn't like their Ultraman series either. Like,
no, it was way different. They
completely missed the point of Ultraman.
Yeah, I think they were trying to cash in on the popularity of Iron Man at the time. That's what it felt. Yep. It felt like Iron, like they're like I don't know, like they lost the rights to which I never seen it, the Japanese Iron Man series. Which I don't know. Maybe you guys, I think you guys probably watch a lot more anime than I do, just by the looks of you two.
You never.
He can say that because he can physically beat us up.
Yeah.
He can fight both of us at the same time.
I kind of hate the 3D anime or whatever it's called.
I do too.
Yeah, I don't like the cell shaded CGI and they kind of go back and roll over it. It looks retarded.
They're doing that Kong Skull Island anime in that I believe.
Yeah, I won't watch it.
Yeah, it's not a good style. It's especially not good for action.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we already had a Scanner Darkly, guys. Let's move past this. Like
exactly.
Ooh, great! It looks like another Xbox 360 game. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that style either. I'm just the old hand drawn animation.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, moving on from that, because we could talk about Godzilla all day, and I'd love to have you back on to do that. You're a small business owner. Hey, Betsy. You're a small business owner in a rather weird climate at this point, and I love listening to your rants about that. But I don't know. I don't want to be like super vague, but I mean, not only are you a small business owner, but it's of a niche business, and it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which has never been more popular than now. But
yeah,
I guess in like today's culture, like can you explain like navigate like that mentality of owning a small business, basically like a niche one, and how you rectify all of that?
My I don't know. That's actually a pretty difficult question, Dan.
Yeah, it
No.
is.
Yeah, no. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate this.
You get to say no.
All right, bye guys. No, I don't know. It's for me. Like I don't think it's a particularly hard sell. The problem is, I think a lot of small business owners, particularly gym owners, don't know how to market or advertise
Yeah.
very well. That's like that's the number one thing I've noticed, and I think in the age of social media, people have gotten even lazier with marketing because it's so easy and so accessible for people to do that they're like, I'm just gonna post this really blurry picture of us training, and I'm sure it'll give me business. No, that's not like no one cares like about that. Most of the time, what people want is, and I say this is like a big time competitor. People do not care about your competition accolades when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Most people don't even know what jiu-jitsu is. It's like people are like, why is everybody wrestling in pajamas right now? That's what it's like in Florence, and it's like people just want a fun and a welcoming environment more so than anything else. Like I could talk about like the benefits of jujitsu all day just because I really think most adults need something like this. It doesn't have to be jujitsu, but I really believe you need a hobby and you guys because you're really into art, Josh, and you draw a lot, and I'm sure it's a very difficult thing to do. And Dan plays music, which is I guess kind of difficult, but no, I'm joking, Dan. but
He's
no,
like,
it's
I've met musicians.
yeah. But but the main thing is like I think most people need a hobby that kicks their ass like constantly. And that's what jiu-jitsu is for me. And that's why I think it's so easy to market it, just because if you kind of advertise that self-improvement aspect, it really I think it really touches it really like I don't know, identifies with a lot of people in that way. I don't know if that answered your question or not,
Well,
but
no, that makes sense, and I think that everybody, or maybe not everybody, obviously not everybody, but I think most people, if they're honest with themselves, realize for the most part, I'm not challenging myself.
Mhm.
And if I want to be a better version of myself, there's got to be some sort of challenge, whatever that looks like. I need to pit myself against myself to see if I hold up. And and I think that's as a for you to be a small business owner, that's challenging yourself too, to say, hey, I'm gonna take a risk, I'm gonna bet on me and
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah, I was very so a little background for the gym itself. I actually purchased it from the guy who gave me my black belt. And so I'm kind of in, I would say, like a really, really privileged situation here.
Well, you are
just
white
because
male.
that too. But
He said, but at least I'm not named Josh Adams.
yeah, I can't imagine what it was like trying to find your name in the phone book. Oh my God, in the 90s. There's 1,000 of these guys. But so I don't know. Like I said, I was I was in a really privileged position where I took over a really good and successful business. And now it's kind of like almost like my duty to take it to the next level. And I actually used to feel a little bit guilty about where I was like, am I really like successful if I'm just taking over a baby that someone else kind of raised, But
are you a bad enough dude to run a business?
But I read a book. I don't know if you guys. I know I've recommended Dan this book before, but I don't know if you guys. Relentless by Tim Grover. He was Michael Jordan's strength and conditioning coach in the '90s, and it was a mindset book. For the most part, I think a lot of mindset books are bad, but I really, really like this one. And he talks about how people used to give him shit all the time because they're like, well, your job's easy. You get to train high level athletes all day as a personal trainer. So why so is it hard? And he's like, no. It's easy to take a lazy slob off the couch and make him into a decent athlete.
Yeah.
It's hard to take a world-class athlete and make him better. The margins are so much smaller than that. And that's kind of how I feel right now is like I've inherited this really successful business basically, and now the margins for the improvement are smaller, and so it's really on me to be creative and make the gym already better than what it is. If I bought the gym and it was 20 members and it had only 20 members, and it'd be easy to get it to 50 members. It'd be easy to get it to 100 members. It'd be easy to get it to 150 members just by being a fun training environment. But now I need to get it to 200, 300, whatever. Like I said, it's for me, it's easy to take some from nothing to something, but it's really hard to take something that's already really good and make it better. And I'm sure you guys both experience that with your guys' art, whether it's the music or the physical art. It's like, I feel like this song is really good, and I'm sure I'm sure there's difficulties in creating something, whether you're starting with the track or starting with the page and then drawing it, but I'm sure the hardest part is towards the end, right? Of like trying to figure out how I can make this better.
Yeah, and
and knowing when it's not, like when tampering with it's going to make it worse too.
Yeah, that's
like there's a ceiling with that stuff. Like complacency and apathy is very much an enemy to creativity, but there's also a tendency to George Lucas something where you overproduce it and overthink it and all. So like it's somewhere in the middle. That tension is what creativity really is about, is pushing yourself beyond, okay, this is good enough, but also reining yourself back and editing yourself to know that I'm not going to overdo this until it becomes garbage.
Yeah, and two things with that is, like, first of all, like, you didn't like just inherit something, like you earned it, like you have the credentials to prove it.
That's fair too.
Yeah, and
good point.
And I mean, I've watched your career with great interest. I mean, I've known you for like 15 years now, something ridiculous.
Yeah,
some sad number. But no, we actually talked about that. I don't know if it was Josh and I or Steven and I about like how the levels of art in particular or skill and people think. And it's like man, you got like you said, the slob on the couch to the local guy who's good. That's a huge gap. And then people think that as you get higher up in the ranks that gap gets smaller, and it doesn't. Like when you get to the NFL, or when you get to the NBA, there's a huge gap between the average NBA player and Jordan or Kobe Bryant. Like, and that's what's so crazy. And not only is that gap huge, but like you said, it's dense, and it's like unbelievably difficult to do that. But in art as well, like for musicians and visual art, everything. Like, and I can imagine, especially because I mean, that's the thing is, like, you told me this. It's like when you go up a rank in a belt, like your rank as far as like how you are nationally ranked goes way down. Because it's it's like, okay, I was the top brown belt, but now I'm the lowest black belt.
Yeah. It's every time you enter into that new, every time you break that glass ceiling of new skill level, you're going to start really low, and you've got to like basically just take your licks to get any better at it.
See, that's good for you though.
Yep.
100%,
that's a good thing, because you've got two different kinds of people. You got people that look at that and realize, okay, there's somebody or a lot of somebodies who are dishearteningly better than I am at this thing, and I'm either going to say, well, I give up, it's too hard, I'm gonna give up, I'm garbage, or I'm going to strive for better, and then there again, it's that challenge builds great creativity, it builds actual growth. And but a lot of people will run away from challenge the second something gets difficult, or even looks like it could be difficult.
And our
culture,
culture has taught that, though, that you're sad or you're down because of challenges in life. When it's the fact that you're not meeting challenges and you're not being challenged enough is why you have no pride in yourself and no joy. Is because you're not going to bed super tired.
I'll say this. My dad and I were talking last night, and Spencer, I don't know what kind of belief system you have, but Dan and I are Christian. But my dad and I were talking, and he was talking about this idea of like persecution, like religious persecution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was saying that here in America in particular, I think there's a lot of people who have confused opposition for persecution. Opposition is not being persecuted. Like the fact that somebody disagrees with you and says, I don't want to hear that, I don't want you to, running into a brick wall is not the same thing as being persecuted and hunted down and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that idea, that just shows that weakness of character and weakness of being able to deal with challenges. If somebody dares to say, hey, I don't like what you're doing, or you're not good, or you run into any kind of opposition, you say, oh, well, they're attacking me.
Victimhood.
They're persecuting me.
Yeah, I identify with that. Like, I'm also a Christ follower, and I feel like there's a lot, not just in the greater American culture, but I definitely feel like a lot of American Christianity is very, very soft right now. Very, very soft. And it's for that, and I think it's just because American Christians have it really good in this country, and we get bored, and we want something to do, and we want to be entertained with something, even if it's with our own perils, I guess. And so we get super invested in these little stupid things that we think are like you said, persecution, when they're not. Like the dumb, what was it? The red cups at Starbucks.
Oh yeah.
A couple years ago. That is the dumbest thing to get upset about.
Yeah, how can you possibly feel like that is an actual persecution against you as an individual?
And why are you expecting Starbucks to have Christ on their cups? Like, why are we doing this? Like,
yeah,
be
why
reasonable
would you ever
here, guys.
think that?
Yeah, like that's the one thing. It's like a lot of one of the big problems I have with a lot of like Christianity in here is even in the Bible, we're expecting the world to act like us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and we get upset that they're not.
Well, either that or that mentality that they've got to defend God against everything. Like, how weak is God that He needs you to protect Him?
Yeah,
from
no, we don't.
Starbucks?
God doesn't like, and I was listening to Dan's other episode with Steven about the He Gets Us thing. It was really good episode. Like God doesn't need our, like they were saying, validation to show how holy and great He is. Like why, like. How powerful do you think you are in American Christian culture that you think that God needs you to defend Him?
Right.
Don't. Like He doesn't. He doesn't need that.
Right.
You're like, Jesus is a 9th degree black belt.
Yes. Like I see stuff like the stupid God's Not Dead movies. Those are the dumbest movies in the world. Like, could that not have gone somewhere else other than patting ourselves on the back saying, look how persecuted our children are in colleges?
Now, have you seen Godzilla's Not Dead?
You should have acquitted your children well enough that that stuff they can combat themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's on you as a parent. That's not on the college system.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand, like, there's a lot of the college system I disagree with, but we are supposed to equip and raise our children in a way that stuff won't bother them. I know Josh has got a little girl. I don't know if you have any kids. I mean, excuse me, Dan's got a little girl. I don't know if you have any kids, Josh.
I don't, but
not surprised.
He's a cat man.
Please don't get mad at me, Josh. I shit on everybody.
I don't have feelings.
It explains a lot by the look of your room right now, but
this guy's literally talking to us from a closet and he's ripping you.
Me or Josh?
You.
Oh no, I'm in my lobby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm in my lobby right now. It looks like a closet because I'm in the middle of remodeling the room.
It's a green screen.
I agree, though, that sense of that we're supposed to be disciplining a generation and to be strong enough to stand on their own without us there to hold their hand and protect them from everything and try to. And see, that's why I don't get involved in the whole boycott culture of, well, we need to boycott this and we need to make sure that this doesn't ever make it to the television, that they need to cancel this show and all this stuff.
Yeah.
This idea that we have to remove all of the offending voices to protect the kids. like that's dangerously close to communism.
Well,
like that's, it's that idea of like, well, we need to control what they see, what they hear, so that nothing can possibly hurt them. Well, that you're setting them up for failure if they never face something that can hurt them.
Well, I personally, like, even outside of that, I think it's just super condescending to do that. It's if you take something away from me that I can't choose to experience because you think it's going to hurt me, you are saying you are not smart enough to discern what this is. Like, let me take that away from you. Like, I was in probably my freshman year of college, and I remember I had an English teacher. This is before I went to Francis Marion. And he was talking about, like, he left a church because they were trying to get rid of the pornographic magazines at the convenience store next to them. He's like, you're telling me that I am not smart enough not to buy those, basically. And like I said, it's not. They're like, let me take all of the. Let me take any sort of chance you have of creating discipline for yourself out of the equation, just so I can protect you in this way.
You're trying to change the world rather than change yourself.
Yeah, and that, like, let me tell you, like, everybody wants to change the world, but the world's just made up of a bunch of people, guys. You've got to. It's got to be a change within. I can't change everybody else around me.
Yeah, you can't legislate
there's
it.
a reason why. There's a reason why God, when He leads the children of Israel into the promised land, there's a reason why the promised land is inhabited. And He said, all right, go in there and claim it. He doesn't clear it out for them. He says, go in there and fight. Yeah, I'm promising that I'll be there with you. I promise I'll give you the strength that you need to secure it, but go in there and fight for it. Go take it.
Yeah, it reminds me of the story of the Jesus healing the lame man. Like, Jesus doesn't say, let me move your legs for you. No, He tells you've got to get up and walk.
Yeah, get up and walk. Pick up
get up and walk. It's on you.
That bed and walk away. I think that's important. Boy, better pick it up, boy. But no, it's an important thing that God doesn't need our help. He chooses to include us, but most of the time it's not because He is teaching us something about Himself. It's a lot of times He's showing us, look, you're capable of standing up. You're capable of walking. Yes, I provided you with what you need to be able to do that, but He tells Moses, lift up your staff and part the waters. Go do these things. I've empowered you, now go do these things. And that's where, raising children or anything else, you empower them, and then you send them to go fight, go claim your your promise.
You need to be raising your children to survive without you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They need to be strong enough.
It's like at our school we have a ton of competitors, and like I'm one of the several coaches we have on staff. But my thing is, like, I can't, like, when someone goes to compete, I can't go compete for you.
Yeah.
That's on you. That's on you to do the work. That's on you to do. If you lose and get submitted in the first 30 seconds, that sucks, but ultimately it's on your job to change that next time.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, hey, you just need to go compete in an easier skill level division. No, you need to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, work harder.
Yeah. The one thing, and I love, I don't really watch basketball, but I love the story of Michael Jordan just because he would never, ever, tailor himself to compete on the level of even of his teammates during practice. He would demand his teammates to rise to his level. He wouldn't go down to them.
Well, there's also that idea of not teaching young people that, okay, well, these are your disadvantages, so we need to shift the game we need to change everything to accommodate your disadvantages. You have to teach them, like, yeah, okay, maybe you're not as strong in this area, so tighten up something else, or work harder in that until you are strong, instead of that idea of let's put it up, let's put up pads and make it soft and make it fluffy and make it easier for you. Let's accommodate your weaknesses instead of letting your weaknesses be not an excuse to lose.
Man, I've literally seen videos shared by Spencer of, like, guys with, like, no legs doing jiu-jitsu, and they are the scariest dudes. Like, it's like, I'm not fighting that guy. Yeah. I've got all four limbs. Just stuff like that.
Yeah, it just goes back to what I was talking about is like a lot of people need something in their life that like constantly kicks their ass.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
really like that constantly humbles them.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that outlet's jujitsu. For a lot of people I train with, the outlet's jujitsu. There was a time when I was a purple belt, which is like the first level of advanced belt for jujitsu. It goes white, blue, purple, brown, black. And so
Like a hump
that
right
first,
there.
yeah, that first year of me competing, I lost just about every match I went against, just because I was in a new skill division. I don't think I adequately prepared for many tournaments. I was probably competing at a weight class I was too small for, and I got my ass whooped in probably 12 straight tournaments. Where there's many tournaments I didn't make it out the first round.
Yeah.
But did I decide to stop competing? No, not at all. Like why would I do that? I'm already this far in. Why not see how far I can go even if I'm not having success right now? And I didn't let that discourage me, and I did really well the next couple years to where I was like ranked in the top 20 in my skill division, and it was I could have decided to take the hard thing out of my life, which was competing, and that was really hard, and in the grand scheme of things, competing is not that big of a deal because it's really just you. But for me, that was my life, that was my job, that was jiu-jitsu. I felt like people I was training with were watching me and be like, well, he trains all the time. Why isn't he competing? I could have just stopped competing and just been like, fine, that's fine. I could have been a just a what they call a gym warrior, someone who doesn't compete but who's really good rolling. But I don't think I would have gotten to the skill level that I am at now if I would have just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and a lot of that is it's a perspective thing. You can say, well, because I wasn't number one, I wasn't successful. I
Yes.
wasn't better than everybody in this room, so I wasn't successful. Yeah, but were you better today than you were yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Were you better at this tournament than you were last year?
Yeah.
Like, that's it's do I compete against everybody else in this room or do I compete against me?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the mindset of I don't have to have anybody affirm me. I need to be able to, for my own peace of mind, say I tried hard. I worked on the things that I was areas where I was weak, and I've made progress, and I'm going to keep doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
you've reiterated this to me before in many of our talks, privately, about how individualistic this kind of competition is, because the guy who beat you could lose to the guy you've beaten like every time,
Yes,
and vice
that's
versa.
happened
Yeah.
several tournaments. Like
Mhm.
there's one guy, he trains out in Florida. Like I've competed against him 2 or 3 times, and he's beaten me every time, and he just seems to have my number.
Mhm.
But I've beaten a guy who's beaten him several times, and it is so strange. But a lot of the times when you get to tournament day, it's just who's on that day, or it's
Yeah.
the way the brackets are
Yeah.
set.
Or the way like your
Well, I
body
know.
interacts with his, and the way your training interacts with his, and vice versa. Yeah, that's
I
what's
always
so
think of
cool.
Yeah, I always think of I think a good example is March Madness for a lot of people who don't like follow like jujitsu or any kind of like combat sports. Is like sometimes you watch March Madness, the best team doesn't win.
Mhm.
Like sometimes you get like some almost unranked team that wins the entire tournament. It's about the streak at the time. It's about matchups. It's about skill, not necessarily
Yeah.
skill. It's not raw skill versus skill, but sometimes it's about just like how your game matches against their
Well,
game.
no, and to go with that, in the book that you did recommend to me that I did read, Relentless, that's what I forgot his name, but that's what the coach emphasized with Michael Jordan, with everybody, was like, look, you've got to get to a point where you eliminate that variable, where it's like it stops being like, oh, you're having off night, or oh, it's like your skill needs to be so high that your off night is better than their best night.
Yes. Yeah.
And, yeah.
Right.
And that's
Well, and I
insane. That's
took
insane, but that's what you have to do.
when I was like 10 through like 14, 15, I took like karate, which was a
I'm
long
sorry.
time ago. But that was one of the things that that I remember even just from sparring is like you could practice and you need to practice and all that, but there was always that aspect of when you stood on the other side of somebody, where your head was at, where their head was at, all those things come into play, and ideally you discipline your body to where it works almost separate from the brain.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
instead
Yeah.
of
That's a great point because, and even I would say sparring. In jiu-jitsu, we call it rolling because you're essentially just rolling
Right.
on the ground.
Right.
But sparring is typically the hardest part of training.
Mhm.
That's where I think you kind of get mentally tough.
Mhm.
I've seen so many athletic, like in shape dudes come in. They'll walk in and they just get strangled by these guys that weigh like 140 pounds, and they don't come back because they can't handle that because they're mentally not ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, I mean, like I don't know about y'all, but I know when UFC first started, like we were obsessed with Ultimate Fighting Championships and pay-per-views and stuff. And I remember what a absolute shock it was when Hoist Gracie first showed up on the scene, because he'd get in. He was kind of a stringy little guy, a wiry little guy, and he'd get in the ring with these big dudes that had great like records. Like they had awesome careers as just huge fighters, and then they get in a ring with him and he would absolutely destroy them,
And he wasn't even the best Gracie.
pull them apart.
Yeah, he was one of they considered him
thing.
one of the worst ones because they just to prove a point.
Yeah, but I mean, like when he hit the scene, like I never saw, and I'm sure inside he could have been intimidated. He never looked intimidated. Like you never saw on his face. He was a machine. And I think that's what that's what discipline is about. Even spiritual discipline, and just as a human being, the way I react, you have to train yourself to where how you feel doesn't impact what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a big part of jiu-jitsu, the jiu-jitsu competition culture, and I think this kind of applies to how Hoist was, is there's your weight division, and then there's something called the absolute division, where after the weight brackets end, they have the absolute division, which anybody from any weight class can enter. And so you'll get these guys who are like rooster weights who weigh in at like 123 pounds versus these ultra heavyweights, which the weight class for that is like 218 pounds and up. So you'll get these really, really tiny guys versus these big guys. But you'll see these amazing things where a lot of times the more technical guy, the guy who's got the better skill set, wins, because even a lot of times it's a smaller guy just because he's more technical. Less he uses a lot of times a lot less strength, a lot less athleticism. But I think that applies to, Hoist is probably used to that. He was used to competing against bigger people. Like even in class, I'm all the time rolling against much bigger people than me.
Yeah, I've seen videos of you training guys that are like 200, 250 plus.
Yeah. And I'm like a 160 on a fat day, basically.
What's it like to not be on a fat day?
So when I have to compete I generally have to compete at what's called featherweight, which is, depending on the division, it's 145 pounds, or the main tournament I'm in is the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation. Their featherweight is 149, and so I just I try to keep my weight.
I've weighed since middle school.
Yeah, well, I've got child arms and little child hands and stuff like that. I'm not a very
big whoop.
Big or dense.
So do I. What's your excuse?
That's what I tell people. Like a lot of times, these small hands actually help. I can sink in chokes much faster than everybody else because I don't have big hands to get in the way.
I could imagine like a large arm actually help, like not being easier to block maybe with your chin or something for like a choke out or something like that. But I also know nothing about it, so.
So I wouldn't say necessarily that, but a lot of times, with smaller people, I have a whole lot more room to move, like when someone's trying to pin me.
Yeah.
Basically. Because, when you move, there's a lot more person you have to move and get out of the way. So I have a lot more space to work with than if I'm trying to pin somebody. I'm usually much tighter because there's not as much person for me to pin you down.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I think that's what's fascinating about jiu-jitsu. I'm not trying to go off on a super big tangent on it, but the psychology behind it was we're going to train people to be able to defend themselves against larger, more powerful foes based on skill. I mean, and that's the whole thing of that's why it's so good, particularly for like women and children to learn.
Yes, yes. I 100% think over most other martial arts, I think jiu-jitsu is very good. Obviously, people are always going to be like, what if they have friends? What if they kick you in the head while you're down? Be like, I hate it when people are like, well, what if you're grappling with somebody and their friend comes in and kicks you in the head? It's like, why do they always have like 18 friends and I have no friends in this situation? Like why is it like, but for me, women, I think it's very important to learn how to fight if you're pinned on your back, which jiu-jitsu does. But I also think for a lot of women, for to defend yourself, a lot of women simply just don't hit hard enough to hurt. And I don't mean that as like in an offensive way or anything. But if you watch like high level MMA women, like a lot of times they don't hit hard enough to really knock each other out in that aspect, and they're trained to do that.
Well, Spencer, most dudes don't hit hard enough.
Exactly. Yeah, most dudes don't even know how to punch. They're like putting their thumbs in their hands and stuff like this, and it's so bad. But yeah, but with jujitsu, it teaches you like technique, leverage, all like just like controlling space, which I think is just so much more important in a self-defense aspect.
Well, and there's also that idea of a lot of martial arts are very reactive, versus with jujitsu and some of those. Don't you kind of teach people to to shoot the legs a little bit, right? To like charge in there and grab somebody.
Proactive.
Or am I thinking about another?
I don't know if I would necessarily say that.
Okay.
Just because one thing I really try to emphasize with people is like self-defense is always self-defense.
Yep.
You shouldn't be,
Right.
even if you got a super aggressive person, you should never ever be the one who tries to initiate. I think street fighting is absolutely last case scenario you should do. Just not even from just the dangers of yourself, but if you like if I shoot like a double leg takedown on somebody and they hit their head on concrete and they die, that's on me at that point.
Yeah, that's manslaughter.
Even if it was self-defense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about this before too. Is like how most people don't realize how awful violence is as an idea and how much it hurts physically. Like it's not fun. Like it's not fun in the slightest.
Yeah.
It's very strange. I think that people fall into two categories: is they either overestimate their ability to fight, or they underestimate like their toughness level. Like I think everybody should get punched in the face at least once.
It sucks.
Sucks, but you realize it's not going to kill you most of the time.
Yeah.
Like that's why I tell people to jump into Muay Thai, kickboxing, or boxing, because I think like a lot of people are just scared to get hit. And that like, even though I'm telling people not to get into like street fights, I think realizing that you're not going to you're not going to incinerate into like 1,000 little ashes if someone just punches you. I think it'll give you the confidence to handle the situation better. Because if someone's being aggressive with you and you don't know, like let's say you've never been in any sort of martial art or any sort of like combat sport, and like you don't have that sort of confidence, you're going to start relying on survival instinct, and most of the time that tells you to either immediately run or immediately like fight, regardless.
Or
and
freeze.
I think just
that's
true, but I just feel like you just get that sort of experience and discipline. You realize like you're not as soft as you think you are. It's gonna help you. This is why I'm a big advocate for why police should train jiu-jitsu. It allows you to have the confidence to assess the situation in a reasonable way. Rather than worrying about the violence that's about to happen.
That's a really good idea, and that's a really good takeaway from all of that. It's like, and that's the same thing, with art and basically anything that anyone can do is like connect those two together. Like what Jai said is like, no matter how you feel, you control. Even you go do something, even if you still feel that way. Like the fear is still there. I'm sure like anyone, trained or not, whenever there's like something as awful as a bar fight or a street fight, fear and anxiety is there. But it's how you react to those things.
I'm sure it's very similar to like the fear of being critiqued when it comes to making art. If you're afraid to be critiqued, like for example, if you're afraid to get punched in the face, and I'm sure it's a lot harder to think logically when you're making art, basically, right? Because you're putting out you're being anytime you make anything, you're at risk of being critiqued. I'm sure that stifles some people's creativity.
To quote Spencer,
there's a lot
everyone
of
should
people
get
that,
canceled
won't
once
try.
to realize that they'll survive it.
Twice for good measure.
Yeah,
That's what Twitter exists for.
yeah. It's actually a psyop to make you stronger. No one realizes it.
If it wasn't for Dan, I don't think I would be on Twitter. This is so bad.
It does
like
suck.
everything in there. Everybody talks about how bad Facebook is. I was like, Twitter's like 1,000 times worse than Facebook.
I don't ever see anything on Facebook except for vegan posts for some reason. Like they keep feeding me all these things about like animals dying, and they're always like terribly drawn corporate art of like a cow crying or something, and it's always the most metal stuff. It'll be like it's like got a cow with a gun to its head, and it just says it happens if you look away or don't. It's like this is like a Walking Dead quote. Like what is?
And I'm sure you look at it and you're like, this art's terrible, rather than taking away any.
Well, what's funny is like he's kind of downplaying it, Josh, but Spencer is actually a highly accomplished artist, and particularly in sculpting.
Okay,
He's lying.
No, please, I've seen your work.
I haven't made art in so long. I actually went to art school, technically at Francis Marion. I went to the art program. Never graduated, so there's that.
You didn't miss much.
It was good. I enjoyed the art program at Francis Marion was actually really good because I had several people tell me they would go to other schools for like summer school, and they're like it's so much easier to get an A at like. I'm not going to name any schools because I don't know any other art programs, but they're like it's so much.
I was in the art program there at Francis Marion as well. I was art
I started out as art education before I switched over.
Yeah, I'm an elementary art teacher, but
that's cool. That's what I wanted to do.
He's like, instead, I got in shape.
But no, you're right. That is a good. There's a good art program at that school.
No, don't let him downplay it, man. He's a magnificent sculptor.
In fact, can make anything out of clay except for money.
There you go.
All right.
That's what I tell everybody.
I think that's a pretty cool place to end it. Let me end the recording, and we can hang out for just a second. But Spencer, thanks for being on, dude. Like, you're welcome anytime. I would love to have you on to do a deep dive into the Godzilla lore. We'll get Hans on here.
Yeah, I'd love to.
We'll get Hans on here to talk with you about it, though he knows nothing about it, and it'll be great.
I love Hans's confidence.
He's amazing.
Dude, Hans
wonderful
is the best.
Guy. He's great, dude.
All right. We'll see you next time, guys.